All right, well, I hope that we're live now and that everybody can hear us and see us. This is our first virtual event with Austin Inno, and we're pretty excited to be giving it a try. I'm in my kitchen, and I'm guessing that you guys are probably at home as well, either in a bedroom or a small office or something like that. So we really thank you for joining us. I think we got a great conversation coming up. We're going to give a few more minutes for people to get into the room here. It takes a while to get these things loaded up on our computers, so I want to start off just by asking one poll question, which you should be able to see here in the screen. How many of you have been at an Austin Inno event before? Hopefully we've met if you have. So you should be able to select there in the box. In the meantime, I also want to point out that there's a chat box there where I invite you guys to put your LinkedIn links there so we can get to know each other. Feel free to chat there throughout the conversation. And also look at the questions box. That's what we're going to look at to source the questions at the end of the conversation. So we'll go through and look at a bunch of those questions, and everybody will have a chance to ask the panelists after our initial discussion. It looks like 65% or so of you guys have been doing an Inno event before, so thanks for coming and thanks for coming back. We appreciate it. We're stoked this time to be working with Hypergiant on this one. To make the virtual event go a little bit smoother and bring a new voice to the conversation. So as we get a few more people into the room, I have a couple quick questions and encourage you to use the chat box for this. I'm curious where you guys are working from now. If you've chosen a bedroom, your basement, your back patio, maybe a different office. So feel free to use the chat box there to kind of share where you're working from. As I mentioned, Inno is being written mostly from the kitchen these days, and my refrigerator there is dangerously close, but it's also pretty convenient. So gonna look at the chat box here and see what you guys are talking about. I haven't seen any responses yet, but hopefully we'll populate that and get a little better idea of how we're working day to day with each other. One other question I had before we get started, as folks are filling the room in here, is where you guys have been getting takeout and delivery from. You know, obviously most of us aren't going to restaurants just yet. So most of us have tried to find who's best at delivering food and who's making the best food that is deliverable. I don't know about y'all, but I've had my share of soggy French fries. So, you know, if anybody's got a hot tip there, let me know. I see Torchy's is one of the favorites here. I think that was John. That's a good choice. I saw they were running some specials with Favor. So
everybody should download the Vinder app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vinder, who we'll be hearing a lot about, hopefully is a hot choice for a lot of people, including Sam.
Yeah. You'll be able to get some restaurant items there.
Excellent. Well, we've got around about 100 of us or so in the room already, and hopefully we'll get a few more folks in. I'm going to get things underway just to tell you a little bit about Austin Inno and what we do. Austin Inno is part of American Inno, which has 14 networks across the country, and we're looking to add a 15th pretty soon here, so we're excited to make an announcement on that soon. I think what we're most known for is probably our newsletter, The Beat, that comes out each day in the afternoon at 4 o'clock. Today it went out a little bit early so that we could do this event. But I'd encourage you to sign up for the Beat newsletter if you haven't already. We think it's the best way to stay informed about Austin startups and tech. And we've got 14 other newsletters across the country if you happen to be tuning in from someplace outside of Austin. And that includes North Texas, where Hypergiant also has an office. So outside of the newsletter and the news stories that we write on the site, we're an events company. So you see behind me the 50 on Fire sign that I happen to have still in my garage. And that's one of our favorite events that we put on every year. And of course, like everybody else, we're changing and evolving as we learn more about this pandemic and trying to figure out how to do these things effectively and give people the best interaction that they possibly can when we're apart like this. I'd also like to mention there in the side box where you have the chat window, you'll see a handout, which will share some links to the companies that we're chatting with today and some additional information on what Inno does. So be sure to check that out. I think you can just download it there. So please check out austininno.com and give us a shot, sign up for the Beat. I'm going to pass it over now to Christie Post with Hypergiant. Christie, you want to take it from here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brent, and thank you, Austin Inno, for allowing Hypergiant to be a part of this amazing webinar. It's just such an important topic right now. So a lot of you may not know what Hypergiant is. So we are an artificial intelligence products and services company based here in Austin, Texas, like many of you. And we have a strong record of working with some of the biggest brands like Nestle, GE, NASA, SpaceX, and we're in industries spanning oil and gas, energy, aviation, healthcare, and you name it, we're probably in it. But we're so much more than a machine intelligence solutions provider. Our mission is really to create a better world. And I think that's where we come in here with this conversation. So after COVID first started, as a company, Hypergiant, we were putting on a lot of South by Southwest events, like probably a lot of you. So we had to come to the conclusion that we have to cancel these events and we need to really focus on our employees and figure out how we're going to start working from home and what we're going to do thereafter. So we're set up in this distributed model where our teams are all over the country and we already work remotely. So it was pretty easy for us to latch on to working from home. So that was the good part about it. And then as a mission-driven company, I think it's really important that we constantly challenge our employees to think differently. And so when COVID hit, it was like, how do you think differently and what can we come up with? So I'll just list a couple of things we came up with before sending it over to Shawn. But we have a 3D printer, like a lot of startups here. So we said, how can we put that to use? We started printing P100 mask filters for doctors and people on the front lines. And now it's sort of like an ad hoc style method where we're printing them on demand as people are reaching out to us. We don't know them, but just on social media, and they're saying, hey, I heard you're doing this, word of mouth travels, and then, you know, we've printed hundreds thus far. We've also created this amazing tool called ACES. It's the After COVID Emission Simulator, and it shows in just a few months the progress we've made to address another challenging time, which is climate change, really. So it shows us, you know, what happens if we immediately step back to our pre-COVID lifestyle. We talked about before joining this panel, we were driving to work every day. So what impact does that have on climate change? And what sort of societal changes are we going to do next? So that we can mitigate the climate change. So I'll put that tool in the chat box so you can all see it. And then lastly, you guys are first hearing it here, but we are going to have a prototype built. It should be built in the next couple weeks, according to our R&D director. And it's the next generation sanitization robot. So it navigates around obstacles and then it uses UV light to sanitize a room so that before, let's say your employees go back to work, everything is cleaned. And then when they leave, you know, it gets cleaned again. So again, thanks Brent and Austin Inno for letting Hypergiant be a part of this. And I want to toss it off to our amazing VP of Culture and Hype, Shawn Ullman. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself and then I'll listen to the panel.
Great. Thank you, Chrissy, and thank you, Brent. I love Austin Inno. It's always a treat to get your news here at the end of the day. So yeah, my name is Shawn Ullman. I'm the Vice President of Hype and Culture. And this is my fourth company with Ben Lamb, and who's the CEO and founder. Like Christy said, we are just trying to make the world a better place and push society forward. So we're super excited about this topic because we have some really amazing executives from powerful companies that have either added or pivoted their direction to help fight against COVID-19. And so each one of these companies has been in the press a lot recently for their innovation. So I'm going to pass it on to them and let them introduce themselves. Why don't we start with Jenifer Dasho?
Hi, thanks, Shawn. This is my first Austin Inno event. I tried to answer the poll before I realized it was only for attendees. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from Shawn and John as well. So I lead the consumer and retail teams at Everlywell. Everlywell is a digital health company, and we are focused on making lab testing both essential, so think things like sexual health, cholesterol, diabetes, as well as general wellness, vitamin deficiencies, indoor and outdoor allergies, affordable and accessible to people. We have over 30 lab tests that a consumer can purchase and self-collect at home. They send their sample in a prepaid envelope directly back to one of our CLIA certified labs that processes their samples within days and digitally delivers the test results directly back to the consumer in a platform that is both incredibly easy to understand, but also our goal really helps you and becomes an essential part for you on your journey to better health.
Great, thank you. And I can't wait for you to share with the audience about what you are doing now. John Hartigan, the head of marketing at Quantum Materials in San Marcos. Why don't you give a little introduction about yourself and kind of the elevator pitch about your company?
Sure. So Quantum Materials Corp is a nanoparticles company. We are one of the, actually the leader in the production of quantum dots, which are nano semiconductors in essence, and they're about the size of 1,000 atoms, and they have unique optical properties. And one of those unique optical properties is the fact that you can create very discrete optical signatures, meaning unique, that cannot be copied. And we've actually taken those optical signatures and those quantum dots and merged them with a blockchain platform called the QDX platform. So in essence, we are merging the digital and the physical through this method. And it has multiple applications on the quantum dot side, everything from displays, and a number of people have actually quantum dot displays in their houses now, televisions, to solar energy, and most recently what we have been working on is anti-counterfeiting through supply chain by merging these quantum dots into actual physical products at a molecular level, and then being able to read those with scanning devices. They cannot be tampered with, and securing the supply chain and products throughout the entire life cycle from production all the way through to warranty and disposal of the products. And so because of that, it's allowed us to do some very interesting things with this pandemic that we're encountering. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but that is what we do over there.
Cool. And are you based in Austin, in the headquarters in San Marcos, or?
Yeah, so I'm in North Austin. We also have a kind of like semi-remote, well, we're all remote now, but we're semi-remote team. We have a lab facility down in San Marcos, attached with a Texas State down there, where we actually have reactors that create the quantum dots and other nanoparticles. And then we have a remote team that works in all different places.
Great, thank you. And then next up, the CEO of Vinder, an app that I've actually used before this all this went down, Sam Lillie. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey. Yeah, my name's Sam Lillie. I'm the founder and CEO of Vinder. Vinder is an app-based payments and last mile delivery platform for local food artisans to sell direct to consumer. Y'all can think about it like Etsy meets Grubhub for hyper-local food. But we didn't always start that way. I originally started Vinder on my bicycle. One of these photos is me on a bicycle, knocking on my neighbor's doors, asking if I could sell what was in their front vegetable garden to their neighbors, and doing all the deliveries by hand, or I guess by leg. And it's kind of progressed from there. Our mission is to create the largest neighbor-made grocery store that holds no inventory, has no delivery vehicles, and is owned by the very people who use it. And that can get confusing because people are like, what does that mean? Well, we ran an equity crowdfunding campaign, raised over $160,000, and our own users bought in. So it turned us into the world's first high-tech food co-op. So we really are a food system owned by the people.
It's absolutely amazing. Congrats on all the success, Sam.
Thanks.
Before we get into what your company is pivoted or added, back in March, Mayor Adler announced that we'd be required to work from home. Could you share a little bit of what steps your company took as a team to go into place when we had to work from home, and how has remote working been for the team? Jenifer, why don't you start?
Sure, happy to. So unlike Hypergiant, Everlywell was not really a work from home culture. So we knew this was going to be a pretty big change for us. We actually, as an executive team, started meeting probably about 2 weeks, almost on a daily basis, before Adler made the announcement. We were watching what was happening in California. I recently moved from the Bay Area. We're still pretty connected with what sort of is happening in the tech scene there. And we started to think about everything from, do we need to practice? Do we need to do test days? How do we care for, in-house at Everlywell, we have customer care teams. So you have to think through space to make phone calls, access to information to help customers. We have creatives and engineers who have very specific screen and computer setups. And how do we make sure that they get all of that equipment home safely? Another thing, we had, I think, a handful of people. I had a woman on my team that was going to start their job for the very first time while we were work from home. So how do we do onboarding? How do we do immersion? How do we make people feel like part of a company when they actually don't get to physically meet anyone, or they never get to walk into the office space? We did, new hire lunches via Zoom. Another big thing that we tried really hard to think about in advance was a core value of Everlywell is transparency, and a lot of that has to do with communication and how are we on a very regular basis sharing status of the company, what's working, what's not, connecting into how we're delivering our goals, but also just the connection that comes from frequent all hands meetings. So one of the things we introduced from day one was 3 times a week company stand-ups. So we would get together, we would share news. Our culture team did a great job. A lot of those had themes. We brought a lot of fun into it to keep people excited and invested. We have since scaled those back to twice a week rather than 3. So we're learning as we go, like what is the best use of people's time versus what is maybe too much, and how do we make some of those choices along the way. But for us, it was a lot of really trying to figure out the basics, because it wasn't a muscle we had flexed. A lot of us had probably done it by ourselves at any given time, but we had never flexed it as an organization, and we needed to make sure we were setting people up for success.
And how's it going so far in terms of, with everything implemented now?
It's going, I'll speak for myself. It's going really well. I think one of the other crazy things which we'll get into a little bit better, but we actually made the decision to pursue a COVID test the Friday before we started work from home the following Monday. So not only did we decide to literally start a new product process and wade into this environment, but we made it at the same time we were going to completely change the way we worked together. Huge credit to the engineering and product team who, the way that they were able to still collaborate and build a product in 13 days is pretty amazing. But I think it's going pretty well. I, for one, have 2 kids. So I'm parenting, working, and stuck at home, and I'm really ready to get back to the office. But I think overall, folks are doing a really good job with it. And, I think it will change the way we work moving forward, even once this pandemic is over.
I agree with that. I think this might be the new norm. I think we're on the extreme side, but it'll be somewhere in the middle. John, what about Quantum? How have y'all been doing with, or what steps did y'all take when Adler asked y'all to work remote, and then how's it going for the team?
Sure. Well, similar lines to Jenifer. We well, first of all, we have a very strong software component, and so that remote work infrastructure was already in place, and we were pretty used to working under those terms. However, we did meet regularly face to face, usually at least once a week, or we would have all hands meetings, and we'd have video chats, etc. So our facility, we pivoted into the COVID-19 thing regarding testing and some other things. So we were able to keep our facility operating, and so our scientists and researchers, et cetera, were still going into the facility. It's very safe with the filtration, et cetera. However, we would have the change from the physical face-to-face meetings with either shareholders or investors, or doing tours. For example, one of our, we show the facility off quite a bit, and so that all had to change, and so we created some virtual content around that, and then we've had a lot of press, and so we needed to get some additional footage. So I had to go down there and when it was all ghost town and take some video, etc. So just for me personally, I noticed that at first it didn't bother me when we would get on Zoom calls and everybody would have their cameras off. I didn't think twice of it. I had my camera off. But then I started to realize that I really liked having the visual interaction with people after 3, 4, 5 weeks, because you just start, you're just looking at a screen all day long, and you start to go, wow, I miss people. So for us, we started to turn our cameras back on, and we don't require it or anything, but we just say, hey, if you want to turn your camera on. So that interaction helps. And we try to do some, build in some kind of social time where we just talk about non-work related stuff, kind of like you would if you took a break and had a smoke or a cup of coffee or around the water cooler. And so we're trying to kind of find some of those ways to bring that social aspect back, because we all know that it's important and healthy, and it keeps you balanced, and so those are some of the things that we've been doing, and it seems to be working, and just the mere fact of turning the camera on seems to help quite a bit.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Sam, what about you and your team?
Yeah, we've been pretty remote for the most part in general. We have a lot of developers that are doing their software for us, and for me, I don't mind if they're remote. Developers are their own animal, and I just let them do their thing. We also have drivers. I mean, we've got guys right on the front line that are delivering all the food, and we've been, like Jenifer, trying to onboard virtually, right, which can cause issues. But the flip side of that is, even though I've got drivers, I go out and I do deliveries as well. So I meet them in the morning, I meet the new guys. That's the type of, at least for me, the type of leader I want to be, wanting leads from the front, and is going to be there. If I've got guys on the front line, so am I. And so I think that has created much more of a bond, and it shows the new hires what kind of culture we really represent here at Vinder.
That's great. So I think the main reason why we're all here is because all three of y'all's companies have been getting a lot of press, because y'all have either pivoted or added a major product to your company that is really leading innovation and helping to fight COVID-19. And I think it's absolutely amazing what y'all have been able to do in a short amount of time and get accomplished. And so if you could tell the audience, how COVID-19 has changed your business model and what products you have created to help fight against it. Jenifer, why don't you lead off with what Everly's doing? Everlywell.
Sure. No problem. We call ourselves that shorthand sometimes too. So it's a really good question. I think we are lucky to be one of the businesses that we're building on a really strong base So one of the things that obviously has happened as part of COVID is people have been asked to stay home. And we are a business that allows people to take care of their health at home. And so we've seen tremendous growth, particularly when you think about like chronic disease management. So cholesterol, diabetes, managing your thyroid, even sexual health has seen a tremendous uptick in the business because this is something where someone would normally go to a doctor and now they are not, it's not the recommended solution. So they've looked to alternatives and we have been there to provide. And so the base business has been really healthy and continues to grow, which we're really excited about. We've been trying to get people to care about lab testing for years. Lab tests are part of 70% of medical diagnoses. They're absolutely essential to your wellness. And what we provide is a way to make that just easier for you to manage your own health. So it's taken a pandemic, which is by no means anything you want to get people to talk about what it is you do or your category, but the base business has benefited overall from that. For COVID specifically, I mentioned it a little bit, but early on, even into probably early February, we actually weren't actively thinking about engaging. I think we, like the rest of the public, didn't realize how dire the situation was going to be regarding testing. We sort of figured the government or the big incumbents, the LabCorps and the Quests, had got this. And it wasn't until mid-February where the medical team sat in on a town hall that the FDA did, where we realized how dire the situation was going to be, how the lack of actual test kits to validate labs, the lack of labs that were ready, the lack of supply was going to really be a problem. And at that point, Julia made the decision. Julia is our founder and CEO of Everlywell, made the decision that we had to step in, because one of the things that Everlywell provides is we are a system that connects lab capacity. So where you might find yourself in a problem, let's say you're in Kentucky and you don't have a lot of cases, so your labs are sitting unused, but in California, where they have a tremendous amount of tests being run, they're backlogged. And so you need a system that can route and connect the actual tests to where there is lab capacity. And we knew we could bring that. We had the infrastructure, we had the systems in place, because that is what we do today. So the first big step that we did was we actually issued $1 million developmental grants to labs that would be willing to invest in validating for at-home lab testing. So we did that purely out of pocket. We had because we just wanted to get people thinking about this solution. We got a lot of interest, and we ended up signing with more than, I think the numbers are between 7 and 10 labs off the bat, getting them up and running. So the first thing we had to do is integrate all these labs that were brand new to the system. We work with a third-party independent physician network that both generates the lab requisition form as well as reviews your results before they get released to you. They have to be connected to all these new labs we bring on board. Another thing about our process that we had to rework was a consumer can purchase our tests, and when they go to register their test, they're asked questions to verify that the test is right for them. Because of the strong, strict guidelines by the CDC of who could take this test, we actually had to build a flow where that was pre-purchase and post-purchase. So in the course of about 10 days, which is normally something we would do in 3 months, let me just think about this so I get it right for our team. We basically built a new purchase flow, built a new checkout, built a fulfillment balancing system, and we built a whole new test in 13 days. And the team did that while working from home for the very first time, really just motivated and dedicated and driven by the fact that we truly felt like we could make a difference. And we offered those tests about 3 days later to frontline healthcare government workers who are using them today. And we continue to work with the FDA to getting an at-home solution available as soon as we possibly can.
That's absolutely amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. The team was phenomenal. It was one of those, I think a lot of us might feel this, but these are sort of these moments in your career where you just look around you and you just feel so blessed and honored to not just be a part of the solution, but to be working with so many people who care so much and are willing to. I think our CTO said, we had a check-in and he's like, I think I'm on day 19, just like nonstop. But I think the reward of what we are able to do, and hopefully we'll get to do more of, makes it really worthwhile.
Well, congratulations to the team and you for all the success. John, what about Quantum? What have y'all been doing, or what did y'all pivot, or what did y'all add to the business that helped consumers and people with COVID-19?
So as I mentioned before, we have a product called the QDX platform, which is an anti-counterfeiting designed workflow and process. And we realized very quickly that this COVID-19 pandemic situation and getting back to work safely, or returning to work safely, and getting back to normal life socially was going to be complicated. And one of the complications is that there is not a clear, straightforward way at the moment that has been nailed down, where we know if someone's someone's health status is, because there's so many phases of this particular virus, and where you are contagious and where you can spread the disease. There is some meeting of the minds on that, but they also believe that there's information that you can be reinfected, that you can be a carrier, and so we realized that this was going to carry on, and that there was most likely going to have to be multiple test phases over a long period of time. And one of the things that we work on, one of our cores, is identity and the authentication of people and things. And so if you can imagine this scenario where in foreign governments, you will have to prove your health status in order to go back to work. And that is a good thing in a lot of ways. But if you can imagine, that is going to be, if you said to somebody, hey, you can't go back to work until this thing happens, right? It's going to create immediately a demand for black market type items. And so that's a real problem because that subverts the trust mechanisms that are being put in place. And you can't blame people. I mean, if you got to put food on the table, you want to get to work, and you need to get those things done. So what we decided was that we had the capability of, with a slight pivot, to create an authentication and identification system. We're calling the QDX Health ID, which is an app that is where we work with test kit manufacturers and distributors and healthcare providers in order to authenticate individuals, authenticate test kits, authenticate healthcare professionals, and then track results in an individual's app. And then the key to this is, because it sounds kind of Orwellian, is that the individual then chooses who they want to share that information with. Nobody else gets that information unless they choose to share it. And so the idea is that, we're using, and you may have seen this around, we're using a kind of like a stoplight color coding system, red, yellow, green, where, once you have taken your test and you've received your results and you have been, quarantined for a period of time and you are in the clear, then your app will turn green and you will be able to show your employer and or your coworkers or your family or whoever, hey, here is the deal. And this information cannot be tampered with. Again, it's built on a distributed ledger system, a blockchain system, Hyperledger. And it is meant that it cannot be subverted, and that you can't be copied, etc. So along the same lines as like when you have to have immunization records for your children when you go to school, when you're enrolling them in a public school, That is a similar type of model that we are using with the app itself.
That's great. And when is it going to be available for the market or to the market?
So I believe my understanding is June 1st. I know they're testing now, bug testing, et cetera. And that's, June 1st is aggressive, but I believe that's the MVP comes out on June 1st.
That's absolutely amazing and definitely needed.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of so part of this has to do with certifying bodies and standards, et cetera. As Jenifer mentioned, they're dealing with a number of standards bodies, and so are we. So the launch date has some dependency on that, and we've been talking to state, local, and federal government agencies to work through those different things.
Great. Well, thank you and your team for all your help to fight this. Sam, what about Vinder? What are you guys doing? You just got some great press last month. Why don't you share with everyone what you guys are doing to help fight COVID-19 and make food more accessible and available?
Yeah, so I work in the food realm, right? And when COVID-19 hit, it fucked the supply chain for food. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Am I?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
this is like cable. This is cable.
Yeah, it screwed the supply chain when it comes to food. I mean, it's affecting small farms, ranchers, restaurants, even the local distributors, right? The wholesale distributors. The whole thing just got rocked to the core. And I was sitting there thinking, like, we built this on community. Vinder was built on community. Vinder was built because my town had a problem accessing local food, and I thought, why can't we just buy from our neighbors? So that's at the core of what we do. And seeing that, I thought, am I going to let this stand by and watch it just decimate the city? Fuck that. What can we do, right? How can we look at our food system in a whole completely different way, right? Not just your grocery store, not just going to a restaurant to have a sit-down meal. No, what can we do to look at a fully decentralized food system? Where are the sellers? Where are the suppliers? Where are the producers? And so with restaurants, it was like, what can we do? We can offer them a no-cost platform to sell direct to consumer. They're already getting wrecked, right? Why charge them 20, 30% just to offer delivery? That doesn't make sense, and that's no way helpful for the community. So we offer no cost to the restaurants. We saw that they're laying off or having to follow their employees, waiters, hosts, bartenders. Start hiring them to be our drivers, right? Bringing them on. Another thing was that with a lot of people being laid off and being stuck at home, they also don't have an income and they're forced to be in this operating realm. Well, luckily, under Texas cottage food law, which is something that most people don't know about, you can bake bread at home and sell it direct to consumer, and you can make up to $50,000 a year. So we were able to bring on cottage industry producers, which allows us to create a platform for people to start making a side income. They can make a side income, a side hustle, grow that to $50,000 a year. That's a pretty solid. If you're grossing $50,000 a year baking bread out of your home kitchen and making that much dough, you're doing something pretty well. Then you just shift up to a commercial kitchen, go over to Cook Snook, and start doing it on a commercial level. It was, how can we look at our food system and evolve it to what is necessary to overcome this pandemic? And that's what we needed to do and shift and pivot, and that's what we've done, and it's just been growing.
It's absolutely amazing. I love your passion.
Yeah, and I love the bread baking. I never knew that. That's very cool to know.
Breads.
I might start baking some bread.
Crackers, cakes, cupcakes, pickles, kimchi's. It is ridiculous what you can make.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we only have time for about one more question. So we're gonna, or maybe two if we do a lightning round. But so how moving forward, how are you going to create a path forward for innovation in your companies? How do you see, this new world that we're living in? How do you see the path forward with your company, and what innovation do you think will continue to happen? John, why don't you start off?
Yeah, so I remember we were speaking about this last week. I think that what we are going to see is people get a lot more serious about their kind of home studios. I think there's going to be more production value to your Zoom calls. I think they're going to have multiple cameras. I think they're going to have multiple screens. I believe that there will be startups that really focus on communication and collaboration software in a way that we've never seen before. So from that perspective, I know that our company is looking into how quantum and nanomaterials play into this next phase of the pandemic, because there have been reports of better antibody tests made with nanoparticles, and so we're looking into all different kinds of opportunities there as well. And then I believe that trust mechanisms built on software, such as our QDX platform, are going to come into play more with the security of these communication platforms like Zoom, GoToMeeting, all these other Slack collaboration, because you really don't know who you're talking to on the other end of these things in many cases. And so I believe you're going to see a number of organizations honing in on that, because we need to know who we are talking to on the other end of these calls and we're collaborating with, and where our sensitive IP is being seen and shared. And so I think that is the next kind of realm that is going to boom.
Great. Sam, what about you?
Oh man, yeah, the future of food distribution is just going to be a whole new game. I mean, you can see it over the last 80 to 100 years. We've just been trying to improve the efficiency of our distribution and supply chain when it comes to food, by creating economies of scale and mass processing plants. But all of those have been fucked and are not going to happen anymore. So all of it's coming back to a local supply chain when it comes to food. You can see it now. I mean, local farms are skyrocketing. Everyone's going to them because they know that they're the producers you can trust. You know what kind of produce you're getting. You know it's the freshest, and you know that the travel chain's not very far, right? So if Cisco's, a couple states away and they can't get you the food, it's going to come locally. So the innovations I see is just going to be, well, one, reduction of office space and co-working. WeWork, they're going to be gone. And then it's going to be coming back to efficiently redesigning our last mile food supply chain.
Okay. Jenifer, what about you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in unprecedented times, and I think Sam mentioned a little bit, this is what they're doing. I think the first and most important thing you do is recommit to your mission. Like, go back to really the problem you're trying to solve, because it's easy as a startup to get distracted by all of these shiny toys and all these things you could go do. And I think in any time where, there's crisis or there's an unprecedented path, it's just a moment to double down on the thing that you were meant to do and refocus. And I think there's a saying, I did not make this up, I read it in a business book somewhere, but it's like, find the fast moving water, find the thing in this crisis that is moving quickly to a solution. I think Sam just mentioned a couple of things related to food. For us in healthcare, it's at home. So telemedicine, right? I mean, the insane explosion in the last 8 weeks on how people are engaging and using telemedicine. Some statistics are as crazy as like an 80% year-over-year growth. A lot of that is because regulations that had been strict for a very long time have been relaxed. They're set to expire post-COVID, but I imagine as consumers get more and more used to this behavior and truly understand how easy and helpful telemedicine is, at-home healthcare, at-home lab testing can be for them, and how efficiently they can plug into their day-to-day life. I think we're going to see a huge shift in how people take care of themselves and where they go to do that. I don't think that means people are cutting out their doctors by any means. I just think they're finding different ways to like engage and have relationships that are a little bit more on their terms. And I don't see that going away at any time soon. And I think that's really core. The at-home experience is really core to what we do. And I see that as a double down and a recommitment to how do we make that the best possible experience we can.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. All three of these companies here, I mean, everything's on your terms and delivered to you, you know, and you're able to control whether it's, you know, authentication of your medical test, the food, you know, food supply delivering to you, or a home, you know, a home test. It's absolutely amazing. So I guess the one last question, and then Brent, you could hop back on for the Q&A from the audience. But from this audience, you know, South by Southwest canceled this year. It was a major blow to a lot of people, not just the you know, for the economy, but also for, you know, a lot of startups. It's a great place for them to get seen, to have meetings. You know, do our panelists, do y'all feel like South by Southwest 2021 will happen, and what will it look like? Jenifer, why don't you answer?
Oh, so I have the benefit of speaking daily with our Chief Scientific and Medical Officer, who is one of the smartest people I've ever known and predicted this pandemic long before it actually happened. And he has cautioned me to not make assumptions about the future. If you ask him, we are nowhere near the end of this pandemic. And I don't know, if I'm really honest. I hope we find our way back to an environment where we can be together and be in large groups and have that community connection. I very much hope a year from now we are there, but I don't know, if I'm very honest.
Okay. Sam, what about you?
You know, I'm not sure. Most vaccines take 2 years, so it's going to be some time. I think that if there is an attempt at South by Southwest next year, it'll be probably half the attendance, if not less than that. I think it'll take a long time to get back to where we were. But I do think that there will be a social explosion once we're able to get back out.
Okay.
I mean, people need a hug.
Virtual hugs right now. John, what about you?
Yeah, so I envision it as something like Sam's, you know, 50, 25%. What I think may happen, I mean, and, you know, if I was a South by Southwest organizer, I would try to be making connections with high-end production companies that could come in and film everything and put it online and create kind of a virtual, half, you know, something else with some kind of package. I mean, you know, I happened to buy a, you know, big quantum dot television just before Christmas last year because, you know, we needed a new one anyways. I can't tell you how much I watched that thing, you know, in the last 3 months. So I think that the future of some of these events is going to be figuring out how to get it on the big screens, how to two screen them, how to have interactive events, how to have someone there at the event who's kind of curating and narrating and showing you individual things and so that you can still experience it, but you're at home. So I see something like that.
Okay. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for this. All three companies, you guys are absolutely on the head of the curve in innovating and helping America and the rest of the world get back on their feet. It's a true testament to Austin, Texas, being a great thought leadership city in the heart of, you know, what we're about. So thank y'all for everything that you are doing and sharing your time. And I'm going to pass it over to Brent now.
Thanks, Shawn.
Thanks, Shawn.
That's
great.
Not sure if I got my camera on here. There we go. Well, that was an awesome conversation. I'm stoked to write about it. I've been taking notes as we went. So some really, really interesting things going on there. I want anyone who wants to ask a question, I use that question box there, and I'll start off with the first one I see here, which is from Art. And he's asking, are any of you guys currently working together? maybe some tangential possibilities there. Are any of these companies working together?
Well, during the conversation, it made me realize I need to talk to Jenifer.
So
we haven't spoken yet.
I need to talk to John.
yeah. So we'll I hope we have a chance to chat later. So it seems like a natural synergy.
And I'm definitely going to download the Vinder app. I missed my local CSA.
Absolutely. I mean, I had, yeah, absolutely.
Let's see here. Question for John. Has your pivot and focus on QDX Health ID affected your marketing of the anti-counterfeiting?
So I think it's actually a natural use case for the anti-counterfeiting direction, because we need to, again, we need to build trust into these processes. I mean, people need to know and have confidence moving forward that when you are being told by someone or some agency that this test is true, or the results are true, or that you have, the correct health status, we need to know that's true, and we need to know that that isn't easily faked. So it's an excellent use case for the QDX platform and the extension of the QDX platform. So there is a point there too where marketing in general has changed. I'm sure everybody could agree to this. I mean, 2-3 months ago you could go out and hawk your product and like you used to, but now, I mean, you really, it's important to be empathetic and know your messaging that, hey, we're in a different time now, and we need to figure out solutions for everybody, and we'll get to business, but we need to focus on safety and health. And I think everybody in marketing is if they haven't woken up to that, they better. So it's important that you take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I'd open that up to Jenifer and Sam too. Do you guys have any thoughts on sort of new ways of marketing and sort of how you're approaching that? I think John brought up an interesting point. It's tough to maybe avoid being insensitive, but you also want to be aggressive, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And you read a lot of books about how great companies are built by leaning in during times of crisis, especially if they have a real reason to win. One of the things we did on maybe a week or so in is we actually revisited our calendar for the next month and a half. Because, think about your social calendar, for example, you might be creating content a month in advance. And we needed to revisit all the emails we had queued up, all the content we had queued up, to make sure that we weren't going to unwittingly potentially be offensive or not aware of sort of a sensitivity or something we need to do. So we did a lot of work to sort of audit that workflow to make sure that anything that was planned didn't go out in a way that wasn't appropriate. We also really have rallied around this core principle of what we do, which is at home. So we have done some messaging and some focusing. One of the things that happens with people, like their psychology during times of stress, is the amount of content they can process shrinks. So you can't, your messaging, your marketing has to be really clear, really precise, and single-minded. So we went back through all of our work to make sure that it wasn't we weren't overdoing it, right? We weren't relying too much on graphics, and we weren't relying too much on sort of shiny marketing toys, and we were being really precise about what we said and when we said it, because people just don't have the capacity to sort through a bunch of stuff. They need to hear from you really clearly, really precisely what it is you need them to do and how you can help them. So those are two sort of tactical things we put into place fairly quickly to reevaluate our work. We also reduced the number of channels that we marketed in. So we were a multi-channel business. We very quickly honed in and focused on the couple channels that were really driving efficient payback basically for our business. And we narrowed our work there and dedicated the team to just making those things work, and did walk away from some of the more extended channels that we had used to market in the past.
Sam, any thoughts on the marketing question?
Yeah, for us, we doubled down on what we do. We doubled down on community. It was more about like being real, right? What we deal with real food, real neighbors every day. And for us, it's not about just like the marketing language. It's more about the actions after the language has been said, has been spoken, right? So it's not like Southwest Airlines running an ad right now that's like, oh, we're here for you, right? But like the meme that's going around is like, where were you when my bag was 51 pounds, right? And then you charged me 75 bucks, right? This is like, how can we provide you value? We're here, and you know what? We're going to step up and we're going to put our money where our mouth is and actually act on it. And so it's really doubling down on that real world. This is it. It's community.
Cool.
One add on too. I think some of the traditional, some of the older mechanisms. I was just thinking the other day when I was grabbing my mail, because that's become one of my physical activities, is walk to the mailbox, which I hadn't done that in forever. So I think some of the older traditional marketing techniques may come back into fashion if we're at home more, like direct mail, and again, like Sam said, I think genuineness and authenticity and following through. That's always been the most effective tool, right? And word of mouth and talking to your neighbors and grassroots. I think those are the places to focus right now.
Excellent. I think Jenifer has to go at 4, so please feel free to bounce out whenever you need. I have a question. Most of what we do is local. Everybody here is pretty much local. So I'm curious, as you look around at the startup scene in Austin, and this is for any of you, if you've seen some other cool pivots or big moves that you'd like to highlight. We're writing about them every day, but you guys see things in a little different light and maybe have some different relationships around town. And I'm curious, what are those other cool pivots, smart moves that you're seeing across Austin startup scene?
I'll jump in. So one of the things that I notice is I don't know as much that's going on in the scene since I'm in my house. The way I used to find out about these things were through meetups or through having coffee or having a beer or something. And so that's maybe on me, and maybe I need to read Austin Inno more often. But so that's been a challenge for me, and I've actually had to really step out of my norm to focus on finding those resources and find out what's going on. But I do know from like a funding perspective, I know it's challenging out there at the moment. Funds are really trying to figure out who, what, where. But I also do see a lot of angel activity, good angel investment activity, et cetera. Oh, sorry, Jenifer. Oh, good talking to you. So that's what I've been seeing. There's always opportunity in these down cycles. They come in different clothing, and you kind of find them. So that's my take on it so far.
I've seen some companies, like I'm so deep in the food industry, it's gnarly, but like outside of that, I've seen concert venues want to start doing them virtually, right? So it's more of an at-home virtual concert that's intimate, which I think is really rad. I think if you pair that with some local restaurants or bars that are offering like DIY cocktail kits, so you can get a little saucy and fancy at the same time while watching a concert, that's pretty sweet. There's a lot of virtual DIY meal kits to bread making, things like that. I think those are all pivots that are going to be needed, and pivots that are going to be a trend moving forward, or at least the behavioral norm, I believe. I think it's a great way for companies to engage with their users, bring them home and give them something of value, right? Give them a concert in their house and then give them a margarita.
I like it. Wouldn't mind doing that tonight.
All right. Yeah.
And we might have lost Brent.
Yeah, I think we lost him. So why don't we we can wrap this up. Thanks everybody for joining today, and thank you for all the companies, John, Sam, and Jenifer for joining. Congratulations on all the success. Keep doing what you are doing. It's absolutely amazing. It's the true heart of innovation, and thank you all for your time.
Thanks for the
Thank you,
opportunity.
Shawn. Yeah,
Thanks for everyone. In.
Good time. Take care, Sam. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
There, John. Bye, everyone. Eat your veggies. Now I got to figure out how to end this thing.